So you know that when you retire, you're no longer going to have a paycheck, and you're going to have some income sources other than your paycheck that you're going to rely on. What are those income sources going to be? It may be that you have Social Security, it may be that you have a pension, but most cases you're going to have to rely on what you saved up to live on. So we're going to be going over how to spend what you saved up to live on and spending it in a way that it doesn't kill you from a tax standpoint, because a lot of times people spend in the wrong order and it causes so much more in taxes. It's one of the biggest things that when we do planning that makes the huge difference for people over time is spending in the right order. If they spend in the wrong order, it can be the difference between running out of money and having a ton left over to leave your kids. In this chart right here, we're showing an example of someone, in this case it's a single man, he's in his 40s. We're showing a situation where he's running out of money around 60s and 70s versus having plenty left over until he's in his late 90s to leave his kids. So my name's Joe Franklin. I'm a certified financial planner. I've been helping retirees and people who are about to retire for about 25 plus years now. And we started this channel to help people put faith to finance and look at things from a biblical perspective. And we like to focus on not what ChatGPT says, but what the Word says as it relates to finances. We've got to figure out what the income sources we have that we're going to be able to count on. What are these guaranteed income sources? Now, these income sources, they typically include Social Security. In many cases, it makes sense for one spouse to draw early and the other one to wait a much longer time. And also, before you start drawing Social Security, that can be a great time for you to be doing Roth conversions, because that can make a huge difference over time in enabling you to have tax-free income down the road and leave tax-free assets to your kids. For those who are lucky enough to have a pension, if you worked for the government, typically you have what's called a cost of living increase on that pension. For other people, you don't have that COLA. You got to figure you've got this guaranteed income, but that's not going to go up with cost of living. And so you've got to make sure that you have enough coming in from other sources to make up for that difference as we have inflation over time. You may have things like rental income, you may have some business income that's coming in, so you want to figure in all those things as your income that you're going to count on. And then you're going to want to figure out what the gap is. So let's say you're getting $4,000 a month in Social Security, and you're having to spend about $10,000 a month. Those are your living expenses, and also includes what you're going to use for travel and other things. You subtract the $4,000 from the $10,000, you end up with $6,000, and that's the amount you're going to need to pull from your accumulated assets. You got to get a good feel for what your expenses are going to be. Usually people figure out, these are my bills, and this is what I spend on XYZ, and then they don't figure out all these things that tend to pop up that add into those expenses, and they end up in a situation where, okay, well now I'm spending a whole lot more than I really thought I was going to. In order to fill the gap, we're going to pull money from taxable assets. We're going to be pulling money from IRAs and 401ks. We're going to be pulling money from Roth IRAs and Roth 401ks. When you do this, we got to figure out what the right order is for you to be able to pull out. And the strategy makes a huge difference over time. We want to plan accordingly so that we don't end up in the bad situation, run out of money, end up in the good situation where we have plenty left over to enjoy and leave the kids. When we're looking at the optimal order to withdraw funds for retirement, you're also going to be wanting to look at the tax implications of all the various types of accounts that you've got, because they're all taxed a little bit differently. We're going to want to make sure that we fill the tax bracket strategically. Now, what do I mean by that? When you're working, you're going to be typically in a much higher tax bracket than you are when you retire. A lot of people are going to be in the 20% plus tax bracket. Some people are going to be in the 30% plus tax bracket. And if you're in a 30% plus tax bracket, a lot of times when you retire, if you don't have that pension and you're waiting to draw the Social Security, you could draw all the way down to a 12% tax bracket. And that's a great time to be looking at taking income from some of the sources where you don't have to pay taxes when you're in that 12% tax bracket. It can also be a great time to be looking at doing Roth conversions when you have to pay a whole lot less in taxes on it. Now, when you start having to take what's called required minimum distributions, you might have to take these big chunks out, and that draws up your tax bracket. So a lot of cases people retire and they don't pay that much in taxes up front, and then they get to the point where they have to take money out of their retirement and their tax bracket suddenly jumps way up, and that's what we want to avoid. We can do that through things like Roth conversions, but that's not the subject of this video. We'll have another video for that. We want to prepare for these tax issues that a lot of retirees really don't consider. So let's look at the different buckets that we're going to be pulling out of and how these impact you and in what order we want to be pulling out of these buckets. Most people have one of 4 different types of accounts, and we like to put these in buckets for tax purposes. So bucket number 1, this is the least efficient bucket. Now in bucket number 1, the money that you put in, when you put it in, it's taxed. As it's growing and paying interest and dividends, it's taxed. When you take it out, it's taxed. So that's going to be like a regular joint account. It could be an account at the bank with CDs. It could be an account just with stocks in it, and it's not inside a retirement account. Bucket number 2 is a little bit more efficient than bucket number 1. When you put money in, it's taxed. It grows tax deferred, however, but when you pull it out, it comes out and it's going to be taxed again. And so some people have annuities. You may have an IRA where you did not get a deduction when you put it in. And so bucket number 2 is just slightly more efficient than bucket number 1. Bucket number 3 is a little bit more efficient. Now this bucket, you get a tax deduction when you put it in. It grows tax deferred. And of course, when you pull it out, you got to be taxed on it. Now most people have 401ks. And these 401ks for a lot of people have grown to be a lot more than what they thought it was going to be when they were working, because guess what? It hasn't had to be taxed along the way. But when you pull the money out, you've got to be taxed on it then. And of course, bucket number 4 is the most efficient bucket. And that's the bucket where you put the money in, you're taxed on it before you put it in. But once you get it in there, you're never ever taxed again. That would be something like a Roth IRA, Roth 401k, could be a health savings account. Lots of things could be in bucket number 4, but that bucket is the one that's the most efficient. We got a quick example. We got the Smith family and the Jones family, and the Smith family was putting $2,000 a year into a Roth IRA. The Jones family was putting close to $2,800 a year into just a regular IRA. The Jones family over time was able to get more money into the IRA than the Smith family because they were able to save a little bit more every year. The Jones family was able to get a little bit over $1.6 million in their IRA over time by the time they're 65, while the Jones family was just a little bit over $1.1 million. So it looks like the Smiths aren't keeping up with the Joneses here. But what we realize down the road is when you go to spend that money, the Jones family is having to pay taxes on everything they pull out. So if they're pulling out $10,000 a month or $120,000 a year, they've got to pay $30,000 to $40,000 a year in taxes on that. So they got to pull out $150,000, $160,000 a year every year just to get their $120,000. And so they're able to do that for a little while, but by the time they reach 84 years of age, they've already pulled out about $2.2 million. They run out of money. Now, the Smith family, they're pulling out that $10,000 a month. That's still $120,000 a year. But guess what? They don't have to pay any taxes on that. So they don't have to pull out that extra $30,000 to $40,000 every year. By age 84, they've also pulled out $2.2 million. They've still got money left over. By age 100, they pulled out over $4 million, and they still got left money over for the kids. In this case, it looks like the Smiths didn't keep up with the Joneses, but the Smiths ended up a whole lot better than the Joneses, because down the road they never had to pay any taxes on what they were pulling out. So it makes a huge difference over time. And so if we can get all our money into one bucket, typically we're going to be looking at bucket 4, which is the Roths. Unfortunately, you can't do it that easily over time. You can convert, but it's hard to save into that over time. Now, when we look at this in reverse, we want to be pulling from the least efficient first, and then pulling from the most efficient last. So let's go into this. So keep in mind when we're looking at utilizing the correct liquidation strategy, it tends to make a bit of a difference if we have Roth assets versus no Roth assets. If we're doing Roth conversions and things of that nature, it can make a huge difference. If we're just looking at IRAs and non-IRAs, it still makes a difference, but not as big a difference as if we get tax-free assets as well. And usually we don't want to be converting until after we retired. For some people, it makes sense to do it before you retire. If you're in a lower tax bracket, it usually makes more sense to save on the Roth side. And so you can do a little bit more converting also when you're in a lower tax bracket as well. But if you're in a higher tax bracket, you want to be saving as much as you can on the non-Roth side where you get the tax deduction, and then when you retire and your tax bracket goes down, you can get that much more benefit when the tax bracket's down. And of course, some people when they retire, they get all the way down into the 10 or 12% tax bracket, and you don't even have to worry about having to pay taxes on capital gains or qualified dividends and things of that nature. So pulling out of taxable assets makes that much more of a difference. Here we've got Stephen and Lisa, fake name. We changed the name to protect the innocent. They're in their mid-50s, and we're gonna look at what some of these changes did for them. They have a business, and in going through the planning for them, we looked at a few different things to help improve things for them. This is assuming they're spending a lot in retirement. They probably aren't going to spend quite as much as what this is showing, but this makes a bigger difference in the analysis. We're showing them starting up a health savings account, starting up a 401k and a profit sharing, and in this case we're looking at Social Security, where he is waiting as long as possible and she's drawing as early as possible. For everybody, it's going to be a little bit different. And so you can see here the base case shows them running out of money at age 86 or so, and when we made these adjustments, the green part here shows them having plenty of money on throughout, and this is investable assets. That doesn't include real estate and things of that nature. We can look at doing Roth conversions, and the Roth conversions make a big difference. You can see how we have this pop up here, and that's all because we don't have to pay any taxes when they get to be a good bit older. From around age 77, 78 on, we'll show you this, how they don't have to pay any taxes from that point on RMDs and things of that nature. And we'll show you the difference between utilizing a liquidation strategy and not. This is utilizing the correct liquidation strategy. You can see that they're running out of money in the base case versus have 18 million at the end of their lives at the other case, the improved case. And if we don't utilize the right liquidation strategy, then it's more like 9 million. So cuts their assets in half. We go to assets here, and we'll click on retirement assets, and you can see how the Roth is getting spent. Now there's some Roth left over at the end, but the Roth is getting spent. If we turn on the correct liquidation strategy, it shows that Roth continuing to grow throughout their lives. And guess what? Their heirs, their kids, inherit this all tax-free instead of having to pay taxes on a whole bunch when they inherit it and have to spend that all over 10 years. And so that makes a huge difference for the kids as well. They also inherit like the cars and houses and things of that nature. They get a step up in basis on that. But the most difficult thing to inherit are things like IRAs and 401ks, where you have to pay 40% plus in taxes on that. If it's a larger amount, and you have to liquidate that over 10 years. So here we got Michael Smith. This guy's a bit younger. He's in his early 40s. And looking at this, we're looking at, let's turn off these conversions, because that makes a big difference. Before we looked at doing different things for him, he was doing okay. In this case, we're actually showing him spending a little bit more than he'll actually plan on spending in retirement. So it's actually showing him running out of money. Social Security doesn't make much of a difference for him. If we turn on this Social Security, we show him taking Social Security starting at 70, but he's a little bit more aggressive. And so Social Security doesn't make that much sense for him to wait. We can get into that in another video. He can do what's called a mega backdoor 401k, which allows you to put extra in your 401k and have that go in and never be taxed again. And we'll do a whole other video on Roth conversions and Roth contributions and backdoor Roths and mega backdoor Roths that you can do through 401ks. So for him, this makes a pretty big difference. And Roth conversions make a pretty big difference as well. So with these Roth conversions, it shows him having a lot more rather than running out of money. The base case here is running out of money. Now, what happens if we turn off the correct liquidation strategy? What we end up with is he still ends up running out of money before he's 95 if we don't utilize the correct liquidation strategy, because if you're spending in the wrong order, it causes a whole lot more in taxes down the road, and we want to avoid having to pay all that much more in taxes when you get to be older. So if we turn on the right liquidation strategy, then that's the difference between him running out of money and having a whole lot left over for his kids. And again, the kids will be able to inherit this tax-free, which is a huge benefit. So what we can do is we'll turn off these Roth conversions here, and this is still showing the right liquidation strategy, and we'll take a look at the cash flow, and he is planning on retiring at 60, and I think he's in pretty good shape to be able to do that. This starts here at 58. You can see his salary goes to 0. Living expenses are still on up there, but taxes drop from 300 some odd thousand to 2,000 when he turns 60. So why is that the case? Why do his taxes drop to $2,000 when he's 60? Because he's spending out of these taxable investments. And if you're not showing near that much in income, then you may actually be in a 10 or 12% bracket, and you don't have to pay taxes on dividends, and you don't have to pay taxes on your capital gains. So that's a huge benefit, and so that's why his taxes go down from $300,000 to $2,000. So if you spend in the right order, it saves you a ton of taxes, and it can make the difference between you running out of money and having a whole lot left over to leave your kids tax-free. But keep in mind, everybody's situation is different. So if you read something or you see something on the internet, it may not be what's best for you. So it's best to look at your own situation, to run your own numbers, or sit down with somebody to help you run those numbers to figure out what's best for you, because your situation is different than your brother or your sister or your friend down the hall or some case study on the internet. When you start having to take these required minimum distributions, we can look at things like qualified charitable distributions that can help save taxes as well. If you want to look at things on your own, you can go on to several different sites like the one we have here. Or if you think this is a little bit tricky, you can give us a call and we can help you through a lot of this and help you plan out your future so that you have a lot more left over, a lot more fun in retirement, because if you have more money, you're going to have more money to have fun with, and that can make a big difference for you. So since you love these videos, please put your thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and be sure to save all the taxes you can over the rest of your retirement.